Hey, Chris Liepe here. A big shout out to Warren Hewart and his team at Produce Like a Pro for the wonderful collaboration I was recently able to be a part of. Everlong, Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. And now I know you've always been out of your head, out of my head, I say. If everything could ever feel this real forever. I'm going to show you how to get that Dave Grohl vocal sound, all with in-the-box stuff and stock or very inexpensive plugins. It's partly approach, it's partly the tools you use. A lot of the stuff that you're going to hear and that I'm going to be demonstrating might feel kind of foreign to you in your own voice, or maybe in the vocalists that you help produce. If you want more help with your singing, click the link below and join my free voice course, and I'll help you to get some of these sounds out of your voice that these rock singers, including Dave Grohl, get. A big part of the Dave Grohl vocal sound is doubling, subtle reverbs, and subtle delay, subtle ambient things going on. The doubling, though, is a huge trademark. He doubles almost everything he sings, studio recording-wise. Here is Dave's version, and then we're going to compare that. I'll build my version with all the tracks that I did and show you how I got close using things right here inside Logic.
Breathe out so I can breathe you in, hold you in. And now I know you've always been out of your head, out of my head, I sang.
So he's got this wonderful, lazy, yet sort of pent-up, aggressive approach. Signature Dave Grohl. So a lot of the sound that he gets is in how he sings. But even if you sing that way, you're not going to be able to capture the vibe if you don't have the sounds right. So there's a lot of compression on his voice, a lot of audio compression. There's ambient effects. Here's mine, just so you can see how big of an effect the doubling alone has. Here's mine with the effects. We'll go over the effects a little bit more in a minute, but without the doubling. Breathe out so I can breathe you in, hold you in. And now I know you've always been. Now, here's Dave's again.
Breathe out.
Hear that chorusing? That's the doubling. Now, I tripled so I could get a little more texture out of my voice. He has a wonderful, raspy, natural texture. I'll explain more why I tripled instead of doubled in a minute. Breathe out so I can breathe you in, hold you in. And now I know you've always been out of your head, out of my head, I sang. All right, now here is the chorus for Dave Grohl.
And I wonder, when I sing along with you, if everything could ever feel this real forever. If anything could ever be this good again. The only thing I'll ever ask of you, you gotta promise not to stop when I say when she sang.
Now, in order to emphasize that natural rasp that Dave has in his voice, I, instead of doubling, tripled. And I sang slightly different characters on each one of these tracks to create this fuller sound. Here's the main vocal. If everything could ever feel this real forever, if anything could ever be this good again. And here is approach number 2, double. If everything could ever feel this real forever. Notice it's completely dry, the double. If anything could ever be this good again. Now here is the third approach. Listen how different this sounds.
If everything could ever feel this real forever. If anything could ever be this good again.
So on its own, especially that third one, if anything could ever be this, it's not, you wouldn't put that front and center. But it's creating, and this is a very common thing when doubling, you might have the main vocal, which is the primary attitude you want out of the performance. And then you have a cleaner, brighter performance, which is my vocal 2, but there's a bounciness to it. And then you have the one that's sloppier and more laid back almost and more angsty. And we don't have Dave Grohl's parts broken apart, but if you listen really carefully, you can kind of hear the same thing. One of them is purer and a little bit more energetic, and another one is a bit grittier. And that flanging and chorusing between these different performances, not just different takes, creates this liveliness that you wouldn't get any other way. All right, let's look at the effects chain and how to get this sort of vibe within the song. I sang through a Liepe microphone, an LCT640TS, and I am putting a little bit of saturation right at the front of the chain. I have just a very mild amount of de-essing happening sometimes. Really a pretty flat EQ, other than I'm boosting quite a bit on the high end. 8K, that gives it that sizzle. You definitely hear that in Dave's track as well. Lots of vocal recordings are hyped on that high end. And then I'm using a decent amount of compression and a little bit of limiting.
If anything could ever be this good again.
The limiter is being kissed a little bit. The compressor is, -6 to -9 dB. You see the meter working pretty hard. This is the way to smooth out a harsh or aggressive vocal performance. We have multiple stages of dynamic alterations, right? We've got the saturation, which is a mild form of compression. Then we've got the de-essing, which is smoothing out just the top end a little bit. Then we've got the compressor, which is smoothing out the whole thing in a sort of softer way. And then we have the limiter. So we have 4 ways of compression or dynamic altering that are working hand in hand to create this smooth, transparently in the mix sound. You can't really go any other way. A lot of people, I'll just throw this one compressor on in my DAW. This is where we really run the risk of trying to task one item with doing too much. It's way better to do little bits of lots of things instead of a lot of one thing. Now let's talk about the rest of the effects chain I have on the lead vocal. We've got a stock Logic reverb here, just a preset, a long ambient preset, and I am rolling off around 200 hertz. That creates this higher, more presency sound. You can hear that in Dave's reverb. And then I've got a separate reverb that's a little bit longer. Same reverb, we're using a different preset, and it's a much longer decay. Now here's something key. I've got my shorter reverb here. I've got no pre-delay. No pre-delay means the reverb comes in right away. On this reverb, I've got a pre-delay set at 242 milliseconds. So this reverb, this longer reverb, kicks in about the same time that this reverb goes away. And I get this wonderful sort of handoff between the two spaces. Here's the short reverb with no pre-delay. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. Hear that very short sort of bathtub sound? Now here's just the long delay or reverb. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. You hear how it almost sounds like a delay? But it's 240 milliseconds afterward. When you put this other reverb in, you don't hear that effect the same amount, but you do hear one reverb handing off to the other. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. Then the last component to the ambience is the delay. This is a stock Logic delay, and I have narrowed the impact of the delay. So we are only working in a very band-limited way. This creates a sort of telephone sound with the delay. Here it is dry. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. Here is the with the delay. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. And I've created a little bit more of a lag on the right side to widen the effect of the delay. Listen if I change this to 0. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. Versus 3% deviation. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. If you're listening in headphones, you heard the delay widen just a little bit off of the single performance. I combine all of these effects. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. And I've chosen to leave the doubles and harmonies dry. The reason I did this is because my lead vocal is taking up the spectrum, and the other doubles and other tracks in there are supporting that lead vocal. Bringing them back in the mix and letting the ambience of the lead vocal take precedence or be all the ambience that there is creates a slightly smaller chorusing effect than having all of them in the same space. I actually wanted to narrow, especially since I had the third vocal in there, I wanted to narrow the sound. Part of that is my panning. Part of that is the way that I chose to use the ambient effects, in that being only on the main vocal. And let's talk a little bit about the singing approach, because that's super important. If you're not taking the right vibe with your voice, all the effects and signal chains and stuff like that aren't going to do anything. He has a very good way of sort of whispering a little bit while he sings. This is not breathe out so I can breathe you in. There's a bit more of this breathe out so I can breathe you in. There's a little bit of false chord engagement and engaged whisper over his clean singing. Breathe out so I can breathe you in. Dave?
Breathe out so I can breathe you in.
You can hear that delay there too. Right? Not breathe, breathe. This transfers into more of a full-on distortion when he gets into the chorus. Well, when you listen to...
And I wonder when I sing along with you.
Brought the delay up there. There's definitely more ambience in that section.
And I wonder when I sing along with you.
We have to take the posture of our voice, not of, and I wonder when I sing along with you. There's the notes, but we need girth. We need grit. We're going to lift something heavy. We're going to add compression to our voice. We're going to hold back air with the area above our voice box, the false chord area of our vocal tract. You naturally do that when you lift things heavy. And I wonder when I sing along with you creates that natural distortion. And I wonder. So you're actually holding back air to create a more aggressive, distorted sound. And then when you double that and you do it in slightly different ways with slightly different tonal approaches, you get something close to what Dave gets on his recordings. I hope you enjoyed this video and a little more techie than the ones I normally do. But if any of you are recording your vocals, you'll appreciate the subtleties in how you make a performance come to life. We'll see you for more.